Once again, for 2021, Toyota is the sales king of the automotive world. Over at Automotive News, Toyota retains the global sales crown, expands lead over Volkswagen on chip crisis management. There's a good write-up here, and I'm not going to go over it because I made a spreadsheet. That's right, we're going to compare Toyota's sales to the number 2 contender, which is Volkswagen, and these two have been duking it out for, I don't know, at least a decade when it comes to similar production volume. And Toyota extends its lead, which I'm surprised to say because I thought Volkswagen would narrow the gap after the pandemic year, but the opposite remained true. So let's go over the sales figures here for Toyota, for Volkswagen Auto Group, and let's have some fun. Make sure you have your snacks and drinks because we're going to spend some time here. So summarizing 2020, and then we'll get to 2021, Toyota just had a 2.4% lead over Volkswagen. Toyota mustered around 9.5 million units, Volkswagen around 9.3 million units. I also put up numbers for Lexus versus Audi because here in the United States, Lexus has been cleaning Audi's clock for years. The only brands that Lexus competes with volume-wise around the 300,000 mark is going to be Mercedes-Benz and BMW. You could say Audi has been the fourth wheel for a while, and then if you want to consider Tesla the new luxury crown, that's totally up to you. I don't, because I don't consider them luxury. If you've driven in a Lexus and then got into a Tesla, they're not anywhere near the same class of vehicles. But anyways, Lexus versus Audi here, and it blew my mind that Audi in 2020 sold 1.7 million units, or roughly, beating out Lexus by over 135%. And a huge part of that is because Audi has such a huge foothold, not only in Western Europe where they're based out of, but in China, they have a massive stronghold, selling tons and tons of vehicles there in the eastern part of the world. But that is changing as the Chinese appetite is growing larger for Lexus vehicles. They're starting to put away all those old grudges for the Japanese culture and things like that, theoretically. But they're realizing that Lexus is also an equivalent and equally good, if not better in some cases, than Audi in China. So these numbers are changing because if we look at these sales here in column G, talking about 2021 sales for Lexus versus Audi, Lexus narrowed the gap massively. Audi actually sold less units in 2021 than in 2020, and Lexus sold over 150,000 more units, which is very, very impressive. So we're talking a reduction in lead for Audi here, at least on the global scale. So Toyota, Lexus continue ramp up volume in places like China, and maybe Audi has flatlined in that part of the world in China. So it's interesting to see. If we look at total volume, this is what gives Toyota the crown for the largest automaker here. If we go over total volume for 2021, Toyota has extended its lead to 18% over Volkswagen, which they just had a 2.4% last year. So in 2021, they're starting to put distance. They're gapping Volkswagen, if you want to call it that. Toyota roughly sold 1 million more vehicles in 21 versus 20, and Volkswagen actually sold less. They sold less vehicles in 2021 versus 2020 due to probably the chip supply, because that's what everyone's been struggling with. But Toyota is starting to feel the stockpiles of their chips run out here, as they're not going to be able to complete 9.3 million units for the fiscal year 2021, which ends March 31st, I believe. They're looking around 9 million units. So the chip crunch is happening for Toyota, and it might level the playing field going into 2022 here, as now Toyota's chip supply stocks have been diminished. And I can't wait to see and revisit this sort of chart a year from now to see where does the market go? Is Toyota going to be hampered, and will Volkswagen kind of catch up in 2022? That would be my guess. I don't expect Toyota to have an 18% at the end of 2022, but we have a whole year to wait and see where the market goes. What I also wanted to break out is just vehicles branded with a Toyota badge versus a Volkswagen badge. And if you look at the numbers, even in 2020 and 2021, Toyota badged vehicles on the road outnumber Volkswagen badged vehicles roughly 2 to 1. But you might be saying, Kirk, How's that possible? Because you just said Toyota is only outpacing Volkswagen about 18%. Well, when you just look at Toyota brand versus Volkswagen brand, not counting their subsidiaries, Volkswagen has a ton more subsidiaries than Toyota. And so their global sales of just Volkswagen are going to be much lower than the global sales of just Toyota. So Volkswagen subsidiaries consist of Audi, Skoda, Seat, Porsche, Lamborghini, Bentley, Bugatti, and then their commercial vehicles like MAN, Navistar, and Scania. Toyota's subsidiaries are just Lexus, Hino, and Daihatsu. And I'm not going to count Subaru on there. None of these numbers include Subaru, but Subaru is 20% owned by Toyota or so. And you can say they also have some stakes in Mazda and other vehicle companies as well. But Subaru would be the next subsidiary on this list. And some people are predicting that Subaru by the end of this decade, so by 2030 or so, Subaru could be an effective Toyota subsidiary, which is going to boost Toyota's numbers here. Now, Subaru's numbers aren't huge by any means. Their massive market is here in the United States, but it would help Toyota pad these stats in their battle against Volkswagen and the rest of the lineup. And don't forget that Toyota spanked General Motors for the first time ever, knocking General Motors off of their, 8-decade-old sales victory of Sales King. So Toyota is not only the sales king of the world, which they've done multiple times before, but for the first time ever, Toyota is sales king here in the United States. Moving on, I guess we can talk about EV production because that's going to be a big part of these companies going forward. It's a huge part of what they do right now. And ever since Dieselgate, Volkswagen has been hell-bent on becoming more and more battery electrified. They killed all of their hybrids in 2019, and that's Toyota's stronghold for electrification and will be a stronghold probably all the way to the end of this decade until 2030. And by 2030, Toyota will be producing 3.5 million battery electric vehicles worldwide. But as it stands here in 2021, Toyota is producing roughly 2.5 million hybrid vehicles, not plug-ins, not battery electrics, but they're hybrid vehicles that we all know very, very well. Volkswagen, like I said, killed them in 2019. Plug-in hybrids is something that Volkswagen is not that interested in selling. They want to go full battery electric as soon as they can. At least what I know about Volkswagen. Toyota, on the other hand, wants to ramp up plug-in hybrids massively before they go really big into battery electric vehicles. So this decade, at least in the first half of the decade, we're going to see a huge increase in Toyotas and Lexuses, for that matter, plug-in hybrid vehicles. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw PHEVs by 2025 in Toyota's lineup outpace Volkswagen's plug-in hybrids. The flip side of that is that Volkswagen's BEVs will continue to massively increase. Toyota's will as well, but Toyota only had about 14,000 BEVs. And you might be saying, Kirk, where in the hell is Toyota selling battery electric vehicles? We don't have any here in the United States. Well, they have a couple in China. Those consist of the Aizoa, I believe, as well as the CHR, full battery electric vehicles, real small volume. They also have the Lexus UX 300e that's sold in Asia and Europe as well. And they also have really tiny, small, like 1 to 2 person EVs in Japan, but those are really, really low volume, like the C Plus pod, I think what it's called. Anyways, we know Volkswagen's growing lineup of ID cars. So I think it's March, they'll be unveiling the ID Buzz, which is their new minivan, which I'm actually pretty excited for because I love surfer vans, as you would call them here in the United States. I'm really excited for the ID Buzz, but ID4 is doing pretty well here in the United States. ID3 is doing well in parts like Europe. On the flip side of that, Toyota is introducing globally this year 2 battery electric products. One is RZ450e from Lexus. That's going to be definitely in small volume. And I will bring you guys hands-on coverage, not only of the RZ, but also the BZ4X very soon here in the coming couple months. Wink, wink. Yes, I'll be driving the BZ4X and give you guys my hands-on impressions. Specs on it are very, very mild, 250 miles of range at best. And that's a front wheel drive model, 200 horsepower for the front wheel drive, 215 or so horsepower for the all wheel drive. So very, very mild specs. It'll be interesting to see what Toyota prices this fully battery electric vehicle at. But anyways, this number will go maybe to 50,000. That might be a little high, 50,000 though, by the end of 2022, where Volkswagen by the end of 2022 with their EVs could be at 700,000. That's just a complete guess, but it's possible. Now, Toyota also has fuel cells, and what's funny is that they sold about half as many fuel cells as they did battery electric vehicles. So they're not really worth talking about here. And I don't expect this number to get over 10,000 globally for a while. It'll be interesting to see where fuel cells go. You guys know my concerns about availability of hydrogen and stations and things like that. But anyways, looking at total electrified vehicles, there's no comparison because Toyota's hybrids are just so massive. But this volume, breakdown of this volume will evolve massively in the next few years, especially for Toyota, as their hybrids will even become more plentiful. I expect them to go well over 3 million hybrids per year in the coming years, and their battery electric vehicles by 2030 will be over 3 million as well, and plug-in hybrids will probably be 1 million or so. That's just my guess. So yeah, their EV lineup or electrified lineup is changing massively for the Toyota brand, and Volkswagen is just scaling up. But that's the end of the spreadsheet in my breakdown. Toyota impressively takes the sales crown here in the United States over General Motors for the first time ever. But on a global level, Toyota is still the sales king over Volkswagen and extending that lead. It looks like they'll keep that lead in the 2022 calendar year for total volume, but will Volkswagen close the gap? Will Toyota extend its lead? It'll be interesting to see, and definitely stay tuned here on the channel because I always break you guys down sales numbers on a monthly basis pretty much for vehicles here in North America, specifically Asian autos, Japanese and Korean. And I cannot wait to see you guys down below. What do you think about Toyota's reign as global sales king? If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe for more Toyota, Lexus, Japanese auto, Korean auto news and reviews. Till next time, peace out.